Apple has been striving to secure a place for its mobile payment service Apple Pay here in Korea since 2017. And after much regulatory delay, an approval was granted last month, with the service itself available starting last week. So what was behind the delay in approval? What are the business prospects for Apple Pay here in Korea? And how does its presence look to affect the local market dynamics? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today we address the presence of mobile payment services, including their convenience as well as concerns. For this, I have Professor Kim Sei-wan at Ewha Womans University live on the line. Professor Kim, it's good to have you with us.
Good afternoon, Sunny.
I also have Matthew Weigand here in the studio. Matthew, welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be here again.
Right, first then, Professor Kim, let's begin with a few words on the popularity of mobile payments here in Korea. Simply speaking, how popular are they?
Mobile payment is very much popular in Korea compared to any country in the whole world. In addition, domestic mobile payment market is expanding quickly now. Basically, mobile payment is a combined payment platform generated by both the smartphone and credit card services. And Korea is equipped with one of the best infrastructure of both. And it makes Korean people to use more mobile payment. More than 95% of Korean, which is almost everyone, uses smartphones today. And the payment through credit card exceeds 60% of all payments. Given that the corona pandemic enforced Korean people to use more mobile payment, the use of mobile payment increased by over 20% last year, 2022, at the size of 330 billion won per year.
Right, I see. And for the sake of comparison, Matthew, what can you tell us about the popularity of mobile payment services over in the U.S.?
Well, studies have shown that about 40% of people in the U.S. say they have used mobile payments at least once. But the number of people that use it regularly seems to be about 10 to 12%. So it's actually pretty similar to the numbers in South Korea, where people use credit cards most often and debit cards. As Professor Kim said, the usage rate is pretty high. The numbers are pretty much the same for credit and debit card usage in the U.S. And then for mobile payment usage, the numbers are also pretty much the same. But only about, I'd say, like approximately 12% of the U.S. people use mobile payments regularly.
Right, I see. Now, Professor Kim, Apple Pay is finally here in Korea since trying to make inroads into the local market from the year 2017, actually. What delayed its entry here?
As you said, Sunny, Apple Pay has been here for 6 years ago, but it was not available to Korean people because there were quite a few technical problems and legal issues in using Apple Pay. For example, Apple Pay was initially delayed because the company, which is Apple, could not register as an electronic financial business operator in Korea, since Apple is considered as a manufacturer, not a finance service provider. But Korea's Financial Supervisory Service finally approved the launch of the service, Apple Pay, last month because they provide service by Hyundai credit card company. And the way of payment by Apple employs near-field communication or NFC technology. So the shops and restaurants should buy NFC reader to be paid by Apple Pay. But only less than 10% of Korean shops and restaurants have NFC reader, and it is expensive at the price of 200,000 won or $150. These were two major obstacles of using Apple Pay in Korea for the last 6 years.
Right, I see. And regardless of that, Matthew, just a day after its launch on March 21st, Apple Pay logged over 1 million subscribers. How do you explain this reality?
Oh, well, when you look at the Korea smartphone market, you can see that basically Korea is the land of Samsung. You know, there's about 60% of Korean smartphone users use Samsung products, which equals about 31 million people. But the number 2 most popular type of smartphone is the iPhone. And while it's not as popular as Samsung phones, there are about 30% of the US population that uses the iPhone in some version. So when you break that down by number, that's about 15 million people, even though they're not nearly as popular as Samsung people. There's about 2 Samsung users for each iPhone user within the country. So when you look at it like that, about 15 million people have iPhones, and then on the first day that Apple Pay was available, only 1 in 15 of these people signed up for Apple Pay on the first day. So it's really only about 7% of the current iPhone users are or were that interested in Apple Pay in the very first day. So it kind of makes you think, like, what were the other 14 people doing on that day?
Oh, you wonder, really.
Yeah.
And how does the payment service offered by Apple Pay here in South Korea compare to that by Samsung Pay at the moment?
Well, there are a lot of similarities between them and also some significant differences. The similarities are that they're both an app on your phone that you use. You register a credit card or a debit card that you already have, and then you put the information on that card in your phone, and then you can pay for things using your phone rather than the card itself. And there is a little bit of an advantage in doing that, a security advantage, in that both apps use tokenization. So when you pay for something using the app, the merchant doesn't get your real credit card number or debit card number. They get a temporary kind of identifier, a token used by both of the apps. And so you are a little bit more protected from having your credit card number stolen or copied or, go out of your control somehow. So that's a little bit nice. The apps also handle reward cards and gift cards, which I have seen in my time in Korea. People like to collect a very large amount of them, perhaps in a small book that they carry around with them to go shopping. But you can put all that stuff inside the Samsung Pay app, definitely, and probably in the future you can do that with Apple Pay, although it's a little bit limited right now. And they can also both be used with a watch, either an Android watch or an Apple Watch. You can use your watch to pay for things by passing it over a device. So those are the similarities that they have altogether. There are a few differences, though. One of the differences is the technology that they use. Samsung Pay uses 2 types of technology. The NFC, the same thing that Apple Pay uses, but they also use magnetic secure transmission, which is a different type of technology that is not something that Apple Pay is set up to use. So the practical differences between these 2 technologies are that when you use Samsung Pay, you have to put your phone right up to a device. Usually it's the same device that someone would swipe a credit card on. So you end up having to give your phone often to the person who you're paying something for, and they take your phone, smash it right up against the credit card swipe box, and then give it back to you. The other way you can do it is with NFC, which is both Samsung and Apple Pay, they can do that. And in using the NFC technology, it only has to be a few inches away from whatever device is paying. So you don't have to touch it right exactly up to the device. You can swipe your phone or swipe your watch right above it. It feels a little more magical.
Oh, it really does. So the sales clerk is not obliged to take your phone from you then?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Professor Kim, does Apple Pay now look to perhaps change the mobile payment market dynamics here in South Korea?
I believe so, Sunny, but Apple Pay's impact, either positive or negative, comes only in the long run, but not in the short run. As we talked about, there are still some remaining problems like deploying NFC reader to users. It takes time, at least 2 to 3 years, to fully deploy NFC readers to all shops and restaurants. But Apple smartphone users, which cover, as Matthew talked about, cover almost 30% of total smartphone users in Korea, would move to Apple Pay slowly because they are pretty much familiar with Apple ecosystem of iPad, iPhone, iWatch, and so on. And finally, it triggers competition among Samsung Pay, Kakao Pay, Naver Pay, and so on. In the other side of the market, however, consumers will be benefited with better service and easier access to payment.
Right, of course. Matthew, what are your personal prospects with regard to Apple Pay's venture here in the Korean market?
Well, I think they have a little bit of an uphill battle. You know, for currently, Apple Pay has a very small segment of the population that can use it, and they also seem to have additional equipment that needs to be purchased, and they also only have a deal with one credit card company here, Hyundai Card. So those three factors have to come into convergence before someone can actually use Apple Pay. So you need to have a vendor who is willing to take it. You need to have, of course, the device itself. You need to have
These
set up
NFC
the app
terminals
already.
that we're talking about.
Yes, the NFC terminals at the shop. You need your own device, which is an iPhone. You need to have set up the app already, and you also have to have a specific card from a specific company for the Korean market. So the number of people that have all those things going together for them is probably going to be limited. And you're going to have to spend some time like moving hardware or increasing adoption by other credit card companies, both on the consumer side and on the vendor side. So it's got a lot of moving parts. Compared to the entrenched Samsung Pay experience, which is a lot easier to use in my opinion, and also has most of the vendors in South Korea already have the hardware that they need to do that, then it's going to be probably an uphill battle for Apple.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, generally speaking, Professor Kim, what would you say are the merits as well as perhaps demerits of mobile payments for businesses?
In implementing every new business platform, there go both of merits and demerits. The same is true for launching Apple Pay in Korea now. For shops and restaurant owners, for example, they need to install new expensive NFC terminal because already 100% installed credit card terminals and kiosks can be used in processing payment of Apple Pay. In real transactions, actually, this is a big burden to users of Apple Pay. But sources are saying that the Hyundai credit card will at least partially pay for the expensive NFC terminal or reader to shop owners and restaurant owners. And also, for a while, Apple Pay is only supported by a single credit card company of Hyundai Card. So for those who do not have Hyundai credit card, it is not possible to use Apple Pay as of now. But as time goes by, it is highly expected that more and more credit card companies will join Apple Pay platform. Then the business owners will be benefited from sales increases from using Apple Pay.
Right, hopefully that will be the case. Matthew, meanwhile, what are the merits of mobile payment services for ordinary customers?
Well, it's extremely convenient. If you have the equipment with you and everything, you can pay for your stuff very quickly. And also, there's some rewards and some discounts and things that happen to use that are offered through the app that you use. For people who are using the app, you can get coupons or discounts or other, promotional events. So that's always nice if you're into that sort of stuff. Also, personally I use Samsung Pay, and that app gives a breakdown of what you have spent over the past month, and it automatically categorizes transactions for you. So you can see you spend a lot on entertainment, or you spend a lot on transportation. And it compares basically your spending habits to a previous month and previous year. So you can get like a glance at what you've been doing. So it has added value that can improve your life a little bit.
And this is not something that Apple Pay offers?
Well, in this case, I have to say that I'm not a user of Apple Pay, so I can't speak to what specific features it has.
Right.
But it probably has something competitive.
Right. Speaking earlier, you talked about how Samsung Pay in certain cases has a certain ceiling or a limit as to how much money you can use per month.
Yes, it seems to have a spending limit. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I've tried to use it to pay for large purchases, and I was asked to by the store to use a card instead. You know, in Korea, if you spend up to 50,000 won, you don't have to sign your signature for it, but then higher purchase than that, you need to use a signature. And for while Samsung Pay can be used for beyond 50,000 won purchases, there is an upper limit there, and then you have to use your card.
Right,
so it's best to keep your card on you as well.
Right. Professor Kim, are mobile payment services safe, do you suppose?
According to mobile payment providers like credit card companies, Apple, and banks, mobile payment is extremely safe because all the information of payment and identity are coded in digital signals. It is known that it is not technically possible to hack digital signals. But I have to say that it is not 100% free from danger. The server of mobile payment platform where all digital informations are collected could be hacked by hackers. And in the case of Apple Pay, the fact that domestic commercial transaction informations are sent to foreign server makes a supervisory agency unhappy. When there comes financial fraud issues related to Apple Pay, for example, legal investigation is needed, then Korean supervisory and police should be investigating foreign located Apple server, which is not easy in many ways.
Right, that sounds challenging. Matthew, regardless of that though, do you suppose these mobile payment services will be ready to replace wallets perhaps in the near future?
Well, I think these services are highly dependent on your battery. So if it's 3 a.m. and you are trying to get a taxi to go home and your battery is at 1%, and if your phone dies, you're not going to be able to find a taxi. You can still find a taxi, but you're not going to be able to pay for it.
It sounds really scary.
Yeah. So you do need a backup system. You need your actual card with you, even though it's located on your phone. And you also, of course, it's always good to have cash with you in case everything else fails. So I don't think it's going to be a replacement for wallets and purses in the near future, but I think it is a complementary service, like something, an added value that you can have so that you can easily swipe your hand over somewhere and pay for something and feel cool doing it.
Right, like magic, like you said earlier. Yeah. Professor Kim, on the topic of Apple Pay's presence in the Korean market, do you see competition in the local mobile payment market as perhaps ultimately proving favorable for its users?
I believe so. In economics, we say that competition is always good for consumers by generating better quality product at lower price. Thanks to Apple Pay, there will be, of course, more serious competition in mobile pay industry. Samsung Pay recently decided to construct updated mobile payment platform by incorporating Kakao and Naver Pay. And by doing that, Samsung Pay says domestic mobile pay market will be more dominated by the three pays of Samsung, Kakao, and Naver for a longer time. Samsung Pay also has a plan to provide domestic consumer tailored services against introduction of Apple Pay. They are saying that because they know domestic consumer better, they will be doing better.
Right. And Matthew, aside from needing longer batteries, of course, what do you suppose will allow for a more productive environment for mobile payment services?
I think a lot like many different technological solutions, I think a standardization would be very helpful here. You know, for whenever a new technology comes out, a new company tries to exploit that technology, they always try to use their first mover advantage to try to create a market where their proprietary standards are the ones that are used the most. We've seen it in software, we've seen it in hardware, we're seeing it now in electric vehicle charging stations. You know, there's 4 or 5 different types of them. Some are popular in China, different ones are popular in the US. Tesla, one company, has its own standard that it doesn't share with anyone else. And the same thing is happening right now with mobile payments. You have NFC-equipped payment systems, and you have the magnetic-equipped payment systems. And there are other payment systems as well that are maybe regional or proprietary. So if all of these companies could get together and standardize what they want to do, then we could have a one best payment system that works for us, the consumer, rather than the payment systems that works best for Apple. You know, sometimes companies can do this themselves, like there's an international organization where you can all get together and they can hash out the particulars, but sometimes companies have to be forced to do this. You know, Apple really likes doing things differently, and so, you know, iPhones still now, they have their own charging cord. They don't want to use the same charging cord as every other company. So the European Union had to step in, and they're mandating that new iPhones that come out must use USB-C, which is the same standard as other smartphones. So it may be that in the mobile payment system market that companies will be able to hash this out between themselves, or it may be necessary for an international body or a government to step in and say, hey, we need a standardized ways to do mobile payments.
Right, that is some food for thought, actually. It really is. All right, Matthew, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. And Professor Kim, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Right, well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Issues and Insiders. Tomorrow, that is Wednesday, we touch upon the future in the mobility market. Join us then. Thank you for now.